What's going on, guys? Tomcat here, and today I'm bringing you another Forza Horizon Supercar Showdown. This is one that you guys have all been waiting for. It got a ton of requests in the comments section of my last Showdown video, and I was really excited to do this one. I apologize for the fact that it took a little bit longer to actually get this video out than a couple of the other Showdowns. I promised it would go up yesterday, and it's only going up today, so I've been extremely busy, and it was really hard to get this one out. Had some complications and stuff, and some real life stuff. But anyway, it's here now, and let me just say that I had a ton of fun with this Showdown. Both of the cars were amazing, amazing to work with, amazing to drive. Now, launching the M3 GTS is actually easier than I thought it would be. The car hooked up really well. You got that 444 horsepower going to the back wheels. Obviously 7-speed dual clutch gearbox working very well. Pretty close gear ratios, as you can see. Not very much time at all between shifts. Even though I am playing in manual with clutch, I can definitely feel how quickly this transmission responds and how quickly it shifts. Even at high speeds, it's really responsive and works very well with this car, the 7-speed gearbox. Now, I'm not a huge fan of 7-speed gearboxes, but this one definitely works really well and is a great fit for this car. Now, on that run, we hit 178 miles an hour. Pretty respectable top speed for an M3, especially an M3 straight out of the factory. I mean, I know there are modified M3s that can go way faster. I mean, there are twin-turbo 1,000 horsepower M3s in real life that can, destroy any stock M3. But for a factory E92 M3, this GTS definitely doesn't disappoint in a straight line. Now, we're going to start this one from a third gear pull from about 40-50 miles an hour. And it pulls pretty well. It definitely... The torque isn't, the torque doesn't really, it's not a huge, massive amount of torque like you would expect from, say, a muscle car, but it's, the torque is almost sophisticated in its delivery. It's very European, in fact. It's it feels like an intelligent engine, and it feels like an intelligent car that's always working to be as fast as possible but as efficiently as it possibly can do it. It's not wasting any time or wasting any motion or wasting anything in reaching its top speed. So very good, respectable top speed run. Now to the drifting. Now, I was actually expecting quite a bit out of this car in the drift department since the gear ratios are so close. Now, that's actually, I thought that was going to be, completely a good thing since the gear ratios are extremely close, but actually, first and second gear are great. At third gear is a little bit weird, it's a bit unbalanced. The funny thing is that since the gear ratios are so close, you find yourself drifting in fourth and fifth gear in this car a lot, and that's because, obviously, not only because the gear ratios are close, but also because you have 7 speeds in your gearbox. Now, that also means that you're going to have to adjust your technique a little bit, because the way the torque is delivered when drifting in the higher gears, like 4th and 5th gear, requires a little bit more, I wouldn't want to say skill, but it requires you to pay attention to the way the gears are working a little bit more. It requires you to pay attention to your RPMs a little bit more if you're used to just kind of drifting by feel. I know I get used to drifting by feel a lot in some American V8 cars, and it's definitely an easy thing to get used to. But when you're drifting in the M3 GTS, you kind of have to relearn how to drift by feel, and you can definitely get to where you drift this car by feel, but it'll definitely take some practice just because of the way the gears are laid out, and also because of the gearbox itself. But it did feel very good, actually, during the drifts. It felt planted, it felt grippy, but not too grippy as to where it wouldn't slide at all. It was very controllable during the drifts, and overall, I really enjoyed drifting the M3 GTS. So keep in mind that it's stock, and if you boost up the horsepower a little bit, I think you could definitely have a very fun drift machine on your hands, definitely. Now for the sound clip. Pretty beast sound, pretty beast sound. I love that BMW V8. Love the way the engine itself sounds, the way the exhaust sounds. Now, onto the beast. The Mercedes C63 AMG Black Series. This thing is a monster. It's a muscle car from Germany. This car is, I mean, if it didn't have a Mercedes badge on it, or this Mercedes body, you'd think it was an American muscle car because of the way it drives, the way it feels, the way it sounds. It's just a really, really, really well put together car, and it's a lot of fun to drive, a lot of fun to use. The torque, obviously, since it's a lot, the torque figure is a lot higher than that of the M3, so it's definitely going to pull a lot harder in the straightaways. We're already up to over 180 miles an hour. I believe, yeah, 182 miles an hour, 183 miles an hour was the top speed of this C63 Black Series. Now, there's an interesting difference when you top speed run both of these cars. When you take them up to top speed, the M3 feels very, very sophisticated, very well balanced, a very intelligent car, especially, you know, even when you're taking it at top speed. It feels like it's cutting through anything in front of it, you know, like it's just kind of soaring to its top speed. This is more like a UFC fighter. This thing basically wants to, whereas the M3 cuts through its targets like a well-sharpened knife, this thing smashes through them like a battering ram. This thing is a battering ram. It's a big German V8 battering ram with a spoiler on the back. That's pretty much what this car is, and it pulls really well in a straight line. The gearbox feels good. It's not as quick as the double clutch system in the M3 GTS. I believe it has a double clutch system. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But definitely a very fun car to take to a top speed run, or take to its top speed. Now for the drifting. Now, before I started off in this, I pretty much knew what was going to happen, which was this thing was going to be fun as hell to drift. And I was right. It transitions really well. The power and torque is always there. It's always there. It's basically there. Not only when you need it, but whenever you want it. Like, there is so much of it that you really, you know, it's like a switch, you know, you can, well, not even a switch, it's like a switch with stages. It's like, do I want a little bit of power, a lot of power, or a volcanic eruption of power? And, I mean, when you put your foot down in the C63 Black Series, that's what you get, a volcanic eruption of power. And did I mention the exhaust note? It's beast. And this thing, when it drifts, it's so smooth and so controllable, and it just slides through corners so nicely. I definitely prefer drifting this over drifting the M3 GTS. Now, I mean, the exhaust notes kind of depend on your personal preference. I mean, the M3 GTS has a more high-pitched exhaust note, sort of more of a European sound. This C63 is very growly, low-pitched sound. It's very American sounding, but not too American sounding. You know, you could sort of tell it has that little bit of European, sort of European power behind it, but it's not completely, you know, so it's not completely American. You guys will hear it right here in the sound clip. Now this is the sprint run for the Mercedes C63 AMG Black Series. Now, as always, launching this thing is a little bit tricky because of that huge amount of horsepower, but the huge rear tires do a great job of putting that power to the ground. Now, the first thing you'll notice in this car is that you can definitely steer it with the back end. You can steer it through the corners. It feels a little bit heavy, but that's to be expected. It actually feels quite good. Mercedes did a great job of bringing the weight down from the stock C63 AMG, and also the tires of this car work really well. Work really well at keeping it planted and really gripped well to the road, really tied to the road, or stuck to the road, I guess I should say. And it sounds great. It changes direction very well. Although you will encounter a bit of understeer at times, but that can be corrected with a with a little bit of a volcanic eruption by pressing the throttle pedal, as always in Mercedes AMG cars. But overall, it's a pretty well put together package. It handles well. It drifts amazingly. The top speed is also definitely nothing to laugh at this car. It's definitely a great stock top speed, and I really enjoyed driving this car. Really enjoyed testing it, and putting it through all the different stages of testing and reviewing it. It's a fun car to drive. That really embodies what this car is about, and that's fun. It's basically, it's like a sophisticated Formula Drift car. That's pretty much what this thing is. Now, the Mercedes C63 Black put down a time of 1 minute 38.7. And now for the Bmw M3 Gts. Now, the Bmw M3 Gts is basically BMW's equivalent of a Porsche 911 GT3, because, I mean, let's face it, the M3 line is basically BMW's equivalent of the Porsche 911 line. It's that car, it's that performance car that symbolizes the BMW brand, just as the Porsche 911 symbolizes the Porsche brand. And you can really tell that they went to great lengths to make this car a very good handling, I should say, track car. It feels great. It corners amazingly well, and it just really feels like a well put together package. It definitely feels sharper than the Mercedes. It feels quicker to change direction. It doesn't have as much turn-in understeer, but then again, you can't drift it as much as you can the Mercedes. So it's a little bit of, you take a little bit of a trade-off. You trade cornering for drifting versus the Mercedes, but it's a really well put together package, and it feels like a really solid car. It's very tight. It works really well in the corners. It's quick. It's an easy car to use if you know what you're doing. It feels really good going through the corners. The top speed of this car is also nothing to laugh at. Not as fast as the Mercedes, but it's definitely, like I said, nothing to laugh at. Drifting, it works really well. It could do with a little bit more power, though, if you want it to be a drift car. The M3 GTS put down a 1 minute 34.8, a whole 4 seconds faster than the Mercedes. If you guys enjoyed that, don't forget to leave me a like.